Hello, so this is chapter 13 in business math. It's called personnel. So we're in lesson 13.6 and it's called travel expenses. So we've been going through just all the different expenses for employees. So, the hiring expenses and then calculating the different benefits, things like that. So now we're going to look at travel expenses once you're already an employee. Make sure you're reading the sections so that you have the background information, you know what they're talking about for each piece of the formula that they give you. Look through the examples. It definitely helps you walk through and know what they're expecting you to do in each problem or each type of problem. But don't just jump into the worksheets and hope that you have everything that you need. Make sure you're reading the chapter so you learn the concept first. All right, so they always give us a little summary here at the top, just kind of a quick summary usually. It doesn't really give you a lot of information, just what is the section about. So if you travel for your business, you will be reimbursed for your authorized expenses. Travel expenses usually include transportation, lodging, meals, and additional costs such as conference registration charges. So that was just kind of one example of other or additional costs. So your total travel expenses equals the cost of transportation plus your cost of lodging plus your cost of meals plus any additional costs that you come up with that are authorized. So they have to qualify for this reimbursement. So really, most of the calculations here are pretty straightforward. One thing that you would not necessarily know right away is calculating the mileage. So in this table, it gives us quite a few employees here, and then the miles that they had to travel in order to get to this conference or whatever it is they were going to. So this person had to travel 240 miles. In order to get this 148.80, because we're going to have to calculate that for the rest of the table, you multiply by the mileage reimbursement per mile. That's what this means. So all of these employees get 62 cents for every mile they drive. And this is a reimbursement for the travel based on kind of wear and tear on your car. That's the idea. And a lot of the time, it also has to do with gas. So I know when I travel, I don't get to submit my gas receipts and the mileage. I have to do, one or the other. Usually it's mileage. That's what we submit. So we multiply, and I'm just going to go multiply by 0.62, and that gets you this amount here. So it tells you how much you get back for your mileage. Meals, they're just telling you how much the meals cost in this column. Hotel room, they're again just telling you how much does the hotel room cost. And then any additional costs. They're not telling us what the additional costs are, just that they're authorized because they're in this column. So we already know. So once we have these amounts, all we have to do is add them together. So we have mileage plus meals plus hotel plus the additional costs, and that's going to equal your total expenses. You literally just add across in the columns. So for the rest of the table, you're going to have to calculate the mileage. They're not doing that for you. So remember, just multiply the miles traveled by 0.62, and that goes in here. And then to do total expenses, you're just totaling the columns. Just add all the expenses together. So looking down here, there's really not anything funky happening in these ones. It's kind of the same thing. They're just giving you a little bit more of a story on these ones, which is, what a word problem is. It just gives us more context to the situation. So you're just going to go through and identify the important information. So Tom Maxwell is a consultant this month. His travel expenses include airfare at $2,690, taxi fares at $98.60, meals at $290, hotels at $590, and miscellaneous at $38. What is Tom's total travel expenses? So you simply just add them all together. This one is pretty straightforward. Since it was airfare, we don't have to take into account mileage because we're just, he did a flight instead of driving. And then instead of doing miles on the taxi, just how much did the taxi cost you? So that just goes into that. Number 8, so you are going to have to calculate mileage on number 8 and then add together all the other expenses here. Let's see. Number 9 gets a little different because you want to make sure you're paying attention to the number of nights that they're talking about, or the length of the conference. So you went to a Kansas City for a 3-day conference last week. Your travel expenses include airfare, taxi, meals, hotel per night, and conference registration fee of $150. So the main thing we have to pay attention to is most of these are just flat fees. We're not going to have to do anything crazy with them. But this says the hotel was $189.90 per night for 2 nights. So make sure you multiply by 2 on that one and then add it in because you stayed for 2 nights. And the $150, it doesn't say per day on the conference. It just says $150. So that's another one. Pay attention. You know, if it said it was $150 per day, well, you were there for 3 days. You'd have to multiply by 3. But in this case, it doesn't say that. It just says it's $150. So we just have to pay attention to the wording. Let's take a look at the algebra question real quick. Remember, algebra does not mean that it's going to be a harder problem. All it means is they want you to take what did we learn in this section and how do we apply it to the situation. Most of the time, you're just going to be missing some part of the information and you have to apply it. So I'm going to scoot up. If it'll let me. Why won't it let me move? There we go. So, and I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close that. All right, so I was just giving myself a little bit more room to work here at the bottom. Close. What is going on with this mouse? There we go. All right, so Yoshira Tamako conducts a 2-day training session throughout the country for a Lifeline diagnostic testing equipment company. Her lodging for each of the 2 nights, so each of the 2 nights is $150. Her transportation costs for air and transfers are $564. So that's all of her transportation costs. Her 2 breakfasts cost $25 total, and her 2 lunches cost $32 total. So we don't have to multiply by 2. It said total. Okay. To stay within her $1,000 budget, what is the most she can spend on dinner each night? So not just what can she spend on dinner, what can she spend on dinner each night? So we need to set up a little formula here to know how much she spent already. So first, that's actually probably the easier way to start is how much has she spent already? So we're just going to total. So she already has lodging for 2 nights, right? So it's 150 times 2. We'll know how much her hotel lodging costs. And then her airfare and transfers cost $564. She had breakfast. Both breakfasts only cost her $25, and then both lunches cost her $32. So if we add these together, and so this one, I'll just go ahead and multiply this. So we have $300 here. So we're going to add, and I'm going to move these over. Oops, 60, dang it. 64, 25, and 32. So if we add straight down right here, we'll get a total cost. How much has she spent so far? So this is important. We need to know how much she spent so far so that we can subtract that from 1,000. Because that'll tell us how much she has left, right? Once we know how much she has left, we have 2 dinners. So we need to divide by 2. Because we don't want the total cost for dinner. We want to know how much she can spend on each dinner. So this one didn't really have, I didn't set it up as a formula. I just did it in pieces. How much has she spent? How much does she have left over from the 1,000? So she can spend this much on each dinner. All right, well, I hope that helped, and I will see you in section 7.